So I want to go ahead and get into today's topic. Today's topic is how to show up as your authentic self. Okay. I just want to give a quick story about who I used to be and how far I've come to really show up as my authentic self. In the past, I've always been worried about how people viewed me, if I was too loud, if I didn't have the best clothes, or were people talking about my hair, my choices, my mistakes. I've actually had a lot of mistakes that have been so embarrassing, and I would live out of those embarrassing moments, meaning like I would do things and I would make sure I would never be embarrassed like that again. And I really lived a life where I allowed my mistakes and things that happened to me in the past really define how I showed up, to how I showed up personally, how I showed up professionally, how I showed up for my friends. And it just, I just allowed my past mistakes to really determine so much. It really wasn't until I made the decision to be like, you know what? I am going to show up who I am, as who I am with these mistakes. This is what kind of shaped me and molded me. And I'm not going to be afraid to show up as my authentic self. There was a quote that really resonated with me that helped me get to this point. It was a starting point to where I am now, which was give yourself permission to be yourself. And sometimes when we go through mistakes, we have embarrassing moments in the past or things that's just like, why would I do that? Like, or anything, any big public moment that kind of made us feel small or made us feel unworthy or made us feel just ashamed. Those type of moments, we allow those moments to hold us back from being ourselves because we really truly haven't forgiven ourselves or given us ourselves permission to show up who we really are. And so this conversation is around that. And then that's why it's so important to me, because I can come on here and talk to you and feel confident in being myself and knowing that who is for me will always be for me, and who is not, that's okay. If you ain't for me, that's okay. And I want us both to get there. I want us both to be in that space because this side is so beautiful and so peaceful. Instead of trying to just, contain yourself and make yourself fit into small spaces when you were made to be bigger. So, with that being said, let's get into today's topic. So, what's the con of you not showing up as your authentic self? Let's put aside, obviously, if you don't show up as your authentic self or who you truly are, you're not going to be happy. Let's put aside, you won't get the most fulfillment or the most out of your career and your professional life. I want to talk more about family, and specifically if you have kids or if you have younger siblings or any family member or close friend that is looking up to you. If you are trying to be a leader in your field, if you're trying to be a leader in general, let's talk about those who are looking up to you and following your leadership. With my mom, I seen her. Love you if you're watching this, mom. I love you so much. But I seen her sometimes when I was younger. She doesn't do it anymore. When I was younger, I would see her sometimes not show up as her authentic self. I've seen her um kind of push herself back, make herself more digestible, more likable to the crowd that she was entertaining at the time. And I just thought that was my mom being herself until I got older and realized that wasn't her being her authentic self. How she was showing up, she was limiting herself and not showing up as her authentic self because of her past, because of comments in the past, because of things that other people have said or things that she may have felt in the past. She will allow herself to play the back. She will allow herself not to show up or take up space, if you will. And her showing that to me, she was my first example. And I started to grow up doing the same thing when people would say certain things about me, which I'm like my mama, I'm loud sometimes. There are some times where, people might say certain things and it makes me feel a certain way. And so I take note of it and I will play small because of something someone else said or a situation that I've been through. I didn't really have I had no other perspective other than to just play the back, to just allow myself to feel my feelings and kind of not show up as my authentic self. Love my mom. I see her now. She's no longer like that. Now she doesn't really care. But it showed me something when I was younger, and I didn't really quite figure it out until now, really within the last 2 years, if I'm honest. Actually, last year, 2023. So with that being said, I have a daughter now. And when I say she is fierce, she is very, very, very opinionated already at 2. She's very particular. She knows what she wants, and she's really demanding. And a part of me is like, I want to keep that fire within my daughter. I want her to continue to always have that. I never want her to play small. I never want her to feel like she has to fit someone else's environment and not take up space. But it only will happen that way if she sees me role modeling that for her. So if you are someone who has siblings, you're a coach or you're a leader in your industry, or you feeling like, I have younger kids or I have younger siblings or anyone that is looking up to you, you should probably keep that in mind. Are you showing up as your authentic self? Are you really saying, you know what? I know people say this about me, but this is something that I do like about myself. And I'm going to show up in that way. I actually do want this. And I'm going to say I want it. I'm not going to pretend like I don't want it because, I don't want to put myself in the limelight and then be exposed and feel vulnerable like I felt in the past. No, I'm going to show up as myself with force, and I'm going to take up space. And if people have an issue with it, then that's theirs, not mine. Is that the energy you give yourself? Is that the permission you give yourself? And if not, it's important that we find a way to move from not showing up to showing up consistently. And to be honest, now that I'm showing up for myself, now that I'm really going out for things that I want, now that I'm starting to really fall in love with who I am because I'm showing up as her more, so I can get to know her a little more, I can understand her a little more. I am now performing better. I'm showing up more confidently. I'm putting myself out there for certain opportunities because I am showing up now as my authentic self and I'm fighting for her. And that's what happens when you show up as your authentic self. It feels better, it feels more natural, and you start to really enjoy being who you are and start to figure out the things that you don't enjoy about yourself. You start to feel less anxious about working on it, less ashamed, less guilty about kind of working through your demons, if you will, and really getting down to who are you? Who is Larita? So I want to just give like a quick step by step on how I did it. The first thing that I did, like I said at the beginning, was give myself permission. AKA, I made the decision. Like, you know what? I'm gonna start showing up as my authentic self. If I want something, I'm gonna assert my opinion on certain things. I'm not gonna shy away from giving my opinion because I'm afraid what people might say or I'm afraid of conflict. No, absolutely not. This is where I stand on it. So it's the first thing I did was make the decision. The second thing I did was set up boundaries and not care about how other people felt about my boundaries. I exercise that daily. So now I figure out, okay, I don't really necessarily like that. So I'm going to put up this boundary in place and you can't cross it. And the thing about the boundary, I had to not care about how other people felt about my boundary. I had to stop caring about how people perceived me when I put this boundary in place because this is important to me. And this is who I am. This is something I don't want. And I'm not afraid to show up like that. I'm not afraid to be my authentic self and say, this is not happening. Like, hey, I can't have you speak to me that way. Sometimes it's like, I don't want no conflict. I'll just avoid them. I won't talk to them. And, I just let them be themselves. No, I have to tell you, hey, when you speak to me, if you want to speak to me, you can't speak to me that way. This is what I want. So I went from making the decision to exercising my boundaries and my wants. After that came forgiveness of myself. I know forgiveness should probably be second, but this is how it went for me. Is forgiving myself. Forgiving yourself is a huge one because there was this lady and she said something that struck me to the core. She said, and I'm going to paraphrase it, it isn't going to be word for word. She said, a lot of times the reason why we don't want to start all over or start again is because we saw ourselves start something and quit so many times that we don't trust ourselves. And this stuck with me. It really, really stuck with me because that is so true for me. I was operating out of, hey, I know I didn't handle this situation in the past correctly. I don't really trust myself to handle it this time. You see, I took a break with the YouTube. You know what I mean? When you're doing something you've never done before, it is easy for you to start and stop because you're trying to figure it out. You're trying to figure out how to really accomplish the goals that you set out. And if you're the first in your family, or if you don't really have those examples of exactly what you're looking for, then yeah, you're gonna have that go and start, stop and go, stop and go, stop and go. But it's really just a pause when you keep going. So for me, I have had multiple businesses and ideas that I started and it didn't quite go through. So when you're starting all over again, here I am again, trying to go after something again, putting myself out there again, going for a certain opportunity again. Do I trust myself to really give it all that I got? You have to forgive yourself. I forgave myself, like, okay, yeah, I did start things. It is embarrassing because I put myself out there, and it fell through. But that's okay. I forgive myself and I move on. And that is what helped me continue to show up as my authentic self. I'm okay with learning in front of everyone. I'm okay with failing in front of everyone because I'm figuring it out. I had to forgive myself for the moments that I was down on myself, hard on myself, feeling guilty for trying something and failing in front of people in private. I had to forgive myself. And that's what helped me get to the last stage. Now, the fourth stage for me is being intentional about what I feed into my mind and very intentional about my thoughts about myself. Very intentional. Meaning, I start to think like, okay, why am I feeling like I can't do this? Why am I feeling that way? Who told me that I couldn't do it? Then I start to realize, oh, it came from 7 years ago. Or it came from when one of my family members said this to me. Or when that one idea fell through, the way I was talking to myself. I used to talk to myself horrible, horribly, so bad, so bad that it started to really affect me and my decisions and how I showed up for myself. If you do not think that your thoughts are powerful to your reality, then you don't know how powerful thoughts are and how it contributes to how you show up for yourself, the decisions you make, and it contributes to everything. Like, I started to be more mindful about my thoughts and question it. A lot of times my viewpoints of myself came from my past, period, good or bad. And I had to unpack that, like, okay, this is what happened to me, these are where these thoughts came from, this is why I view myself this way. So now I'm more intentional about what I feed myself moving forward, the people that I surround myself with, the conversations that I'm having, what I'm viewing on social media. And so you have to unpack some of the things that people have told you about yourself and how much of what they told you you really believed, and unpacking that and unlearning that and being more mindful of what you feed into yourself, what you feed into your life and into your mind moving forward. Okay? So those are the steps there. Make the decision to show up as your authentic self. Assert your wants and your boundaries. Forgive yourself for past moments, past things, and positions you put yourself in that you really didn't deserve. Forgive yourself for those moments and be intentional about your thoughts. You have to be intentional about what you're thinking and realize, like, is this coming from my past, my trauma? And then also being intentional about what you feed yourself moving forward. Okay? So that is it. That is all. I'm so glad we have these conversations, and I should probably stop saying that because I'm happy that we have all the conversations. For me, how I just been more intentional about what I feed into myself is really just getting more locked in with God. Be more intentional about how He views me. Like, the confidence that comes from that alone is unmatched. And so that will be our next conversation, is now we learn, like, okay, we need to start showing up as our authentic selves. Now, how do we do that confidently? So thank you so much for joining me for this conversation, and I will see you on the next one.